Thank you for joining us today at our online hustings for the Easter 2020 Cambridge Union elections. Before I begin and hand over to our candidates, I would like to deliver a message from the current Standing Committee of the Cambridge Union. We would like to preface this message with an extract from a speech made by James Baldwin at the Cambridge Union in 1965. It is a terrible thing for an entire people to surrender to the notion that 1/9 of its population is beneath them. And until the moment comes when we, the Americans, we, the American people, are able to accept the fact that I have to accept, for example, that my ancestors are both white and black, that on that continent, we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other, and that I am not a ward of America. I am not an object of missionary charity. I am one of the people who built the country. Until this moment, there is scarcely any hope for the American dream, because the people who are denied participation in it by their very presence will wreck it. And if that happens, it is a very grave moment for the West. As a standing committee, we know that this has been a difficult time for many in our community, and we want to say that our commitment to free speech doesn't mean anything unless everyone feels like the union is a place for them. While there are some bright spots in our history, the union has historically not been a welcoming place for everyone, especially for Black people and members of other BME communities. The union is committed to improving itself. We will amplify Black voices through our public events, continue to guarantee representation on committee with a dedicated BME officer, greatly expand our debating access work through Zoom, and provide a platform where important anti-racist conversations can happen. If you are interested in educating yourself on anti-racism, the union has some resources on our YouTube page that may be of interest, including talks with Al Sharpton, Oriogun B, and Chelsea Kwachi in the last year. Most importantly, we believe that Black lives matter. I will now briefly outline the format of today's hustings. All candidates, bar the presidential candidate, will have 3 minutes to speak. The presidential candidate will have 5 minutes. We gave our members an opportunity to submit questions, and if submitted, we shall put them to the candidates. Today, we have 1 candidate in the speaker's race, an unprecedented 4 in the executive officer race, and 1 for the presidential race. So, without further ado, I will now hand over to our first speaker, Keir, who is running for speaker's officer.
Hello, and firstly, thank you, Jungmin, for those really valuable opening comments. I'd like to talk today about why I'm running, and ultimately, in a speaker's officer, I think what matters ultimately is our ability to produce a good term card. And my pitch to you is that I have the knowledge and the experience required to pull that off. I've spoken to president after president, speaker's officer after speaker's officer about how to pull off a good Lent term, because we know that Lent can be one of the most difficult terms to organise. And we know that starting as early as possible and collaborating with the Michaelmas team is the only way to get a term card sorted in time. And we know that there are a myriad of ways the entire process could be made vastly more efficient. The question is simply one of doing it. That's why my manifesto starts with a plan of action. I'm running because I believe I know exactly how to turn a Lent term card into a triumph. And I hope that the work I've done this term, organising entire panels on the spot and booking speakers for other events on a completely improvisational basis, shows that I have the ability to put my plans into action too. So that's the meat of my pitch to you. But the speaker's officer job also entails some creative freedom, and that's where my policy programme comes in. The 3 fundamental themes of my tenure will be variety, inclusivity, and responsibility. On the former, variety, I've made a number of pledges, broadening the focus of our speaker events beyond politics and into the creative arts, making it easier for societies to host events in collaboration with us, and continuing to work on professionalising our image and bolstering our online presence so that we are the most attractive destination for speaker events we possibly can be. On inclusivity, I have pledged to give students from underrepresented backgrounds opportunities to interview speakers and to create a speakers committee of both diverse backgrounds and diverse interests, in the belief that this will lead to a better selection of events for all members too. And I have pledged to continue the efforts I've made so far in ensuring gender-balanced lineups in our speaker events. Finally, on responsibility, I'm extremely keen to continue efforts already underway in relation to carbon offsetting, and I'll cast an eye on our every imaginable detail to find ways we can further reduce our carbon footprint and become a truly climate conscious institution. So there ultimately is my pitch. In the areas of this job that are left to my discretion, I promise to be a speaker's officer for all members. And in the area of this job that just requires some blooming hard work and commitment, I promise to be as hardworking and committed as I possibly can be. The proof of all of these efforts will be in the term card. But for now, I ask for your trust in the form of your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your speech, Keir. I have 3 questions for you actually that we've managed to collate in advance. So the first one is from Alice Williams at Trinity. She asks you, in your manifesto, you pledge a carbon neutral union. Does the Speaker's officer have the power to deliver this?
Yes, I think that's actually a really important question. What I've tried to outline in my manifesto is that there are lots and lots of very small ways in which we can begin to make significant improvements on our carbon footprint. One example is at the moment we use Panther taxis for our for getting speakers to and from the union, and it's a very simple thing to just request of them that they bring their environmental, their green taxis with us. There's lots of little details like that. I mean, I talk again about in the manifesto about making meals more environmentally friendly, for example, maybe reducing the amount of meat that we include in them. It's all these kind of details where what it really requires is speaker's officer and in fact an executive officer and a president and everybody to really pay attention to their remit, the specific details of their job in which we can begin to make a difference. And I'm not going to claim that overnight I'm going to solve our environmental footprint, but I do think that being really vigilant about it will make a very significant difference.
A second question, thank you for that, is from Peter Hunt at Trinity Hall, who asks you, would you seek to increase the time in which questions from the floor that can be posed to a visiting speaker?
Yes, I think that's actually a really interesting question. And one of the things I sort of cut from my manifesto just purely due to space was about wanting to increase the variety of event formats that we include in our events. And to be honest, part of it comes down to the discretion of the speaker. I know some speakers who come to the union are much more keen to take questions from the floor than others. And so I think there's an element of this which is sort of out of my hands, but I personally believe that the union is a free speech institution first and foremost, and that means giving opportunity in the platform for our members to interview and to question speakers on the issues that they care about. So I would say yes.
Great, thanks. And one final question. This is from Alex Davies at Johns, who says, what in-person events have you worked on in the union?
So I've worked on actually relatively few on in-person events, to be perfectly honest with you. My sort of coming of age in the union has been this term with the panel events that I've done and the speaker events that I've booked in terms of getting, for example, Hustings with the Caraway event coming up, these sorts of things. So to be perfectly honest, my experience in Lent was relatively limited, and I've made no secret of that. I think it's been a huge education to learn kind of on the job this term in a very difficult term for the union in general. And I hope that that is the experience that I will bring to this job in Lent.
Thank you very much, Keir, for your speech and answering those questions. I will now proceed with the speeches for the position of Executive Officer. This will happen in alphabetical order by surname. So I'd like to invite Lara Brown to speak first about her pledges for next term.
Hi everyone, and thank you for coming, albeit virtually, to what's famously the poorest attended event on the union term card. If you don't know me, my name's Lara Brown. I'm a first year at Downing College, and I'm standing for Executive Officer. Over the next 3 minutes, I want to achieve 2 things. I want to demonstrate why my manifesto pledges are crucial to the successful future of the union, and I want to show why I've got the experience to best put them into action. I've now spent 3 full terms on full committee. In that, I've been a debates guest liaison, deputy executive officer, and now women's officer. I had finally risen to head of my department, but sadly, thanks to the pandemic, there hasn't been an awful lot of guests to liaise with. I'm most proud of my work as a deputy executive officer and as women's officer. In Lent term and over the VAC when it became clear that the usual programme of events won't be going ahead. I worked with our President Adam to put together a panel on the EU and coronavirus, sending out invitations to MEPs, Vince Cable and prolific journalists in order to put together and host a virtual event, which, when I last checked, I received 1.4 thousand views on YouTube. Having finished that, I sent my text to Yanis Varoufakis, who spoke on May 22nd. As women's officer, I trawled through all our event spreadsheets, ensuring diversity of speakers, and I made sure that I ran an entirely gender-balanced panel. Having hopefully demonstrated my proficiency in the union, I hope I can now demonstrate that I'm advocating for changes worth making. I joked earlier that Hustings are typically the poorest attended event of the term, usually populated by 1 or 2 of each of the candidates' friends. This demonstrates, I think quite clearly, How many of our members don't feel engaged with the society? Membership of the union is an absolutely huge investment, and yet, in the process of campaigning, I've spoken to so many people who never attended an event. Some never even picked up their cards. I think that by working with Lent Term's diversity officer, while also implementing a one-to-one gender-balanced invitation policy, I can put on a series of debates which engage and enthuse our members. To the end of increasing engagement, I also hope to hugely improve our publicity, working with the press officer to create regular coverage in national press. Finally, I want a serious focus on improved access to the union. I want anyone to be able to audition for a debate, and I don't want people to feel like they need to have been taught the format at school. I will work with the debating officer to overhaul our debating workshops in order to make them more open and accessible. Beyond the union, I want to reach out to the wider community. There should always be seats reserved to our debates for children from local state schools, and the access officer should have the chance to meet them before and work with them on floor speeches. Each of our online events this term have received tremendous engagement. Were they to have taken place in person, we would not have been able to fit everyone into the chamber. I think this proves there's a real appetite for our content. It's not our speakers that put people off coming, it's the oppressive sense of elitism in the chamber. It's because we spend our time debating the brilliance of the union itself rather than proving its value to our members. I do hope that I've convinced you that these are changes the union needs, and they're changes I'm the right woman to implement. So please do vote Lara for exec when polls open tomorrow.
Thank you, Lara, for your speech. I will now like to hand over to Leo Markakis, who will also describe his pledges for next term.
Hi everyone, I'm Leo and I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to watch this. Today, I want to draw the focus away from my manifesto claims, and I feel like those are best discussed on a personal level. Instead, I want to tell you my story within the union, which I have only briefly mentioned during my campaign. My first contact with the union was in Lent 2017, long before I joined as a member. I had been employed as a bar supervisor in the 1815 during Kate Dunbar's term, and since then I have seen 7 different committees, every one of them with their successes and failures. Last year, I have started my degree at Anglia Ruskin, and having a special connection to the union, I have joined as a member without second thoughts. I have been helping since, from steward to AV, to head of AV, and then proudly becoming the first ever member to be on standing committee from Anglia Ruskin. I had been elected diversity officer, a position that unfortunately is going to by-election this time. This brings me to my key point, which I have not touched during my campaign. Seeing so many manifestos and claims during my time, I have seen how tempting it is to take the easy way out and market yourself on virtues. Certain qualities are in it to every candidate, and I didn't feel like it would be right to platform myself into any of those. As someone I have worked with this term once agreed with me, if you feel like you need to tell someone you care for diversity, you are clearly doing it wrong. Virtues like diversity, access, representation should be hardwired into every candidate's action. So I'll keep my speech quite short. Vote someone with whose experience and dedication is unparalleled. Tomorrow, vote for Leo.
Thank you very much for your speech, Leo. I will now like to hand over to Kieron Spoors.
Hi, I'm Kieron, and for those who don't know me, I'm a second-year lawyer at Homerton. I know that the union excels when it doesn't shy away, but tackles head-on the most controversial issues of our times, and at the heart of that are our debates. I'm putting myself forward to be your executive officer because I want to maximise the potential of our debates. But I also know that these debates provide a great opportunity for you, the member, to get involved, whether that be emergency debates, floor speeches, or even just talking to speakers. And as part of my manifesto, I summarised my pledges in 4 key words: accessibility, engagement, variety, awareness. On accessibility, the union is only able to put on these great debates when it puts you, the member, at the centre of what it does. And so should I be elected, I will strive to ensure that you have a voice at the union. I will do this, for example, by making sure that you can voice your opinion on the debates through online feedback. But I will also make sure that should we are able to, providing of COVID, have further opportunities for you to be able to attend debate dinners through balloting system. But I also work for a more convivial post-debate reception so that you can stay behind and enjoy time with the speakers. On engagement, I believe that the union is also at its best when it reaches out. That's why I pledge to continue to allow different schools, colleges, sixth forms, particularly those in disadvantaged areas, to not just attend our debates, but be involved in those debates as well. But I also work with societies and faculties in developing debates relating, for example, to topical issues in those subjects. Furthermore, I also seek to expand the use of our chamber, for example, to host mooting competitions. On variety, like I mentioned, the debates are at the heart of what the union stands for. And my pledge for a diversity of debate motions is one aspect of that. But I also propose to provide new ways of debating to instill new freshness and excitement into the centerpiece of our union. In particular, I would introduce head-to-head and freeweight debates so that there's a variety in the way we tackle those big issues. But I also will work with the president and others so that you, the member, can get involved by auditioning for those debates. And on awareness, of course, these ideas will only get off the ground when you are aware of what the union is putting on. And I will make sure that I maximise the publicity outreach, particularly through our YouTube channel and offline presence, but specifically advertising our emergency debates. These are a great chance for you to get involved when you might not want to make a speech during the main debate. But I noticed that these are rarely advertised, and that's something that I would change. And I would also want to make sure that there are drop-in sessions for those who are interested in debates, floor speeches, or the main debate itself. But what makes me the best candidate? I believe that I have the necessary experience, personality, and enthusiasm for this role. From being head of events management, I know how the union works on the ground, and being involved with the invitations committee has given me the important insight into the process that goes into planning events and getting the speakers that we need. Furthermore, I am someone who is able to work with anyone in different and sometimes specialized situations. I'm able to do this because I've always approached what I do with enthusiasm and dedication, and this role will be no different. So whether we're in full operation, socially distanced, or fully online, I'm committed to doing what I can as your executive officer. Obviously, check out my manifesto, and I hope I can count you on your vote tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Keir, for your speech. I will now like to hand over to our final speaker for the exec race, James Vitali.
Hi, everyone. My name is James Vitali. I'm a PhD candidate at Christ College. I'd just like to associate myself with the Standing Committee's earlier statement. A little bit about me. I first got involved with the union when I arrived here in 2018. I joined for the simple fact that I love debating. I started by attending workshops, and I've appeared in a couple of public debates. More recently, I have worked on what I think are some really worthwhile reforms in the union's operations. As graduate officer, I authored the Graduate Recruitment and Engagement Reform Plan. I helped put together the materials for our successful proposals for extensions to the bursary system. I've worked alongside the publicity team to improve our online presence. And I've also served on 2 invitations committees, the work of which is the sort of nuts and bolts of what we do. I think this experience in reform and invitations is vitally important in the very unique situation we are in. So that's me. I'm passionate about debates. I'm enthusiastic about reform, and I'm practically minded. My policies centre around 3 core principles. I want to deliver engaging debates. I want to implement some key reforms, and I want to address the challenges of coronavirus. And I'm just going to start with the last first. For some time now, I have been banging on about what coronavirus means for the union. Well, in one regard, it's a huge test. Financially, the loss of academic term is a huge, massive financial blow. From my discussions with the bursar, the summer period is where the union gets lucrative bookings, good takings at the bar, so on. And we've lost all of this. To address this, I want to drive up graduate membership in Michaelmas term. Graduates are a vital but chronically undervalued resource. Most of the university's growth is amongst postgraduates, and we need to do more to engage with this group. We should be engaging with these interested and interesting people regardless, but moreover, more graduate recruits means more subscription fees to aid the union's finances. Secondly, implement key reforms. Aside from those necessary to graduate engagement, I want to reform our emergency debates, which I feel have lost their way a bit recently. Fundamentally, I want to join them up with our debate workshops. I want to publish emergency debates motions earlier. I want to give our fantastic debate coaches the chance to train people on them at the workshops. And giving these people a chance to speak in the chamber is probably as important in emergency debate as the viewer's experience. So I want them to remain absolutely open to everyone. But having these workshops connected with the debate, emergency debates, in this way will improve the content of the speeches. I may also look into whether we can have a happy hour to sort of overlap to get bums on seats. Finally, delivering engaging debates. I've published the motions I'd like to pursue on my manifesto. There's one on liberalism, there's one on racial politics, there's one on culture and art, and there's one on the state of the British Union. But I'm interested in all sorts of others like international geopolitics too. Additionally, I want to see us collaborate far more with societies and groups to put on events. I absolutely loved the classics debate we had earlier in the year, and I've enjoyed working with the Centre for Geopolitics, a think tank, to help organise our panel on China taking place tomorrow evening. I hope you can tune into that. I want to interact with other societies early on in my elect term to put together events and to work on securing the best speakers. The union needs to be a hub for the Cambridge community. These to me are the most important issues facing the union at the moment. If anyone would like to discuss my views on diversity and access, charitable engagement, on the future of the union, I'd be more than happy to too. And I hope you will lend me your support tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your speech, James. I think that might have slightly crossed 3 minutes, but that's okay. Just a final thing is we actually have a question from Peter Hunt at Trinity Hall for all of the exec candidates. Unfortunately, there was a slight technical difficulty, so we only have a part of his question, but I think you can kind of tell from the context where this is going. So if you could all answer this question in the order that you spoke in for all the exec candidates, so that's Lara, Leo, Kieron, and then James. And the question is this. At present, the union excels in debates around politics and policies. It has, however, increasingly shied away, and I think what he's trying to say is, what is your take?
So I think our debates are the best place to get controversial speakers in. I think with a single speaker event, we're giving a platform to someone that might go unchallenged. And I think in a debate where we acknowledge there are two sides, I think it'd be great to have controversial speakers. That being said, I think there's a big difference between being controversial and not really having fact-based claims, not having a huge amount to say. So I wouldn't invite someone like Tommy Robinson, for example. I don't think he deserves the platform, and I'm not sure that giving him a speech at the Cambridge Union is a good thing to do because it legitimizes him. So I want to tread that line carefully, but have a huge diversity of thought if I were to be elected.
Well, firstly, the good thing about debates is because, like Lara said, they're not single speakers. So you can easily have someone who's equally competent to counter their argument. But the other good thing as well, because you can take points of information, and this is where the members can actually interact during the speech. It wouldn't be something after he gives his whole speech that you can maybe make a question. So this is where the members themselves have a really important duty towards the union and keep making sure that those views are contested.
As has already been alluded to, the debates are a really good format in which we can challenge speakers on what they do say. You know, the union has always stood for free speech and standing up for tackling those big issues, not shying away from them because they are very sensitive, but being able to tackle them head on. And the debate can be the best way of doing that because, like just been mentioned, not only of course, can the other speakers interact with them, but also the audience. And I think it's important, and what I would pledge to do is to work to ensure that we do tackle those controversial issues. And in terms of the speakers, you know, getting speakers from a variety of different perspectives so that we can understand the topic from all different perspectives, because that's the best way we can engage with those topics.
A good question. I think there's some, with all these things, there's a lot of common sense involved, but a couple of principles. I think it's vitally important we're exposed to arguments we disagree with so we can hear them and tackle them. We're a free speech institution, and I truly believe that. We have two sorts of sort of primary events that I'd like to quickly mention. Panels. Panels seem to be a great opportunity to get experts in and to build consensus. Debates to me seem to be the opportunity to put controversial topics out there and hear different views on them. So I think we need to sort of think about that division in the sort of events we do.
James, very sorry, but would you mind keeping it slightly brief? Sorry.
that's me. The last thing is diversity officer. I want them to be much more prominent in the invitations committee and organising debates.
Fantastic. Thank you very much to all our candidates for executive officer. I would now like to invite our final speaker today. So that's the candidate for president, Freddie Fisk.
Hello, hi, yeah, I'm Freddie. I'm a second year at Robinson. I've been involved with the union for just over a year now. I started off on invitations committee. I then worked as social media manager and most recently have served as 2 terms as treasurer. In that time, I've achieved a lot. I wrote over 100 emails to speakers last summer. As treasurer, I doubled discounts, our members' discounts, that is. I drew up a proposal to extend bursary memberships and presented this to trustees along with Gabriel, who was president. I also presented a proposal to extend bursary memberships. Both of these are things that have been passed to our trustees, and I hope we'll be able to be in a position to make sure they're implemented next year and to build on these. But beyond all of this, there is so much more I'd like to achieve. And so that's why I'm running for president. I have a vision. I want to make the union a real centre for public debate, one that gives a platform to as many voices as we can on most topical issues. But I also want to make the union a community that is accessible to all and that's a fun place to be a part of. That's why I want to produce unrivaled online content and keep it free. It's why I want to remain as adaptable as possible with our term card and produce events which are responsive to the latest social and political developments around the world. Whatever happens next year, whether we have an in-person term or a virtual term or somewhere in between, this lockdown experience should show that there is a real opportunity here in pushing our online events and in keeping the union topical. Adam, Sarah and Josh have done a fantastic job this term, and I'd like to continue their good work. So let's aim to beat Oxford in the number of YouTube views the union gets. And who knew the Cambridge Union might be a real influencer online. On the point about making our community more accessible, I think there's only so much we can achieve with the membership paywall as it is. That's why I talk at the top of my manifesto about pushing to reduce the cost of membership. I'm aware that current financial constraints mean this has to be a long-term goal, but I'd like to lay the groundwork in Lent 2021 by boosting sponsorship and ensuring the term comes well under budget to prove that this is a change that can be possible in the future. I'm also keen on green issues, and so I think being careful about spending money on for serious carbon emitting long-haul flights will also help to keep within budget and focus financial efforts on where it's really needed. In terms of the day-to-day about making our community more accessible, I'd like to bring diversity officer more closely, not just into speakers and debates planning as it is at the moment, but also into social events planning to create a diverse lineup of social events. And I'd like to extend our reach beyond Cambridge with a designated alumni officer as well. I've spoken about being responsive, and before I conclude, I think there's an elephant in the room which needs addressing. The grave and distressing global events which have come to the fore this week have shown that the union needs to do more for inclusion and diversity, for sure. And I have a few policies already which I've mentioned that address this. But the narratives I've been reading on social media this week have also shown me that I'm not as knowledgeable as I should be about all the issues. And that's why I want to commit to reaching out to societies in Cambridge who campaign on these issues, who know more about them than I do, and also to reach out to pressure groups around the world who do the same. Maybe we could push to institutionalize this relationship, perhaps with a regular once-termly event in collaboration with, say, the African Caribbean Society or the Muslim Student Society in Cambridge, or with the QSU BIMI campaign. These are tentative suggestions because I don't want to suggest I have all the answers, but I do want to genuinely improve the union, and I will listen to those who can help make that happen. Thank you.
Much for your speech, Freddie. I have 2 questions for you that we had from advance. So Adam Davies from Magdalen asks, why is this the second election in a row with only one candidate for president?
Very good question. Part of me see this as something we need to address as an issue with people's involvement in the union. But there's also a bit of this which I think is kind of, a case where actually the union is quite a collaborative environment, and people decide that sometimes it's good to let certain people go for the job and step out and go in the next time. So for example, I thought about running last term, but I didn't, because I thought Aman would do a good job. So I do think it's a problem, but I also think it's maybe not as big of a problem as people perceive it to be. I think we have an issue with engagement, and in the long term, not as many people vote in the elections as they used to. And I do think some of this is about the union and its place in Cambridge. And I think to an extent we're seen as a bit of an archaic institution. And so I'd like to change that. And that's why, I focus a lot on membership costs, and also am keen to listen to ideas about how we can make the union more inclusive and diverse and keep up to date with topical debates.
And one final question for you, from Emily Hall at Robinson. She asks, how exactly do you plan to push for reduced membership fees?
Another very, very good question, because I appreciate this question comes up again and again and again in union hustings, and everybody thinks they can solve all the problems of the union in one term, and I fully admit that I can't. That's why I stress that this is a long-term proposal. But I think what often happens is people have these ideas that they want to make the union more affordable, and they realise that you can't achieve it in one term, and then it doesn't get put on the agenda. What I'd like to do is show that with the right budget management and with the right prioritisation, this is something that we can do in the future. I appreciate right now with coronavirus difficulties financially and also the redevelopment project, this won't be something we can achieve by the end of Lent. But I think if we do, boost sponsorship, as I said, and if we remain under budget, I could maybe put a proposal to trustees at the end of Lent that looks at a union in maybe a year after that, where the redevelopment has happened, we've got a lot more income coming from the commercial side, and we can actually begin to think, okay, what can we give back to our members?
Thank you very much for that. Well, thank you. This is essentially the end of Hustings now, so thank you to those of you who are joining us today, and of course, thank you to our candidates. Voting will start at 10 a.m. tomorrow, so Monday the 8th of June, and it will close at 6 p.m. This can be done online via the CUS website. If you have any trouble logging in or any other questions, please get in touch with the returning officers at ro@cus.org. Thank you very much, everyone.